The royal palace of the Kelari Dominion floated above the capital city like a calm thought held in a restless mind. It had no visible engines, no supports, and no clear shape that stayed the same for long. From a distance it looked smooth and perfect, like a single piece of stone shaped by careful hands. Up close, it felt different. Walls curved when no curve should exist. Hallways met at angles that made the eyes feel unsure. Light came from nowhere, soft and even without lamps or stars. For thousands of cycles, the Kelari believed the palace was alive in its own quiet way. It chose where rulers sat. It decided which rooms were open. It guided visitors without words. No one argued with it. No one questioned it. The palace worked, and that was enough. When humanity joined the Interstellar Accord, the Kelari agreed to host a welcoming ceremony inside the palace itself. This was rare. Outsiders were usually kept in the lower halls, far from the inner spaces where history lived. But humans were new, strange, and interesting. The palace, the elders said, would want to see them. The human delegation arrived with careful steps and curious eyes. There were diplomats trained in calm speech, scientists trained in quiet wonder, and one soldier who stood slightly apart. His name was Elias Mercer. He wore a simple uniform, no heavy armor, no weapons beyond a small ceremonial side tool he was not expected to use. His job was protection but mostly tradition. Humans felt better when one of their own stood watch. Elias had trained for many environments, space stations, planetary cities, diplomatic halls. He had learned to read people, exits, and systems without thinking too hard about it. The palace felt wrong to him in a way he could not explain. Not dangerous, just uneven. As they entered, the main hall opened wide, wider than seemed possible. The floor was smooth and dark, reflecting the ceiling like still water. Tall pillars rose up, but when Elias tried to count them, he lost track. They seemed to shift when he was not looking directly at them. The Kelari hosts moved with calm grace. They did not look around. They trusted the palace. Elias did not. His eyes followed lines, corners, shadows. He noticed that some parts of the floor were slightly worn, while others, just as exposed, were untouched. He noticed that when the group paused, the light adjusted a moment too late, as if the palace had expected them to keep walking. A Kelari guide spoke softly, explaining the history of the hall. Elias listened, but only half. His mind was busy. "This place is old," one of the human scientists whispered, full of awe. "Old things need care," Elias whispered back without meaning to. The scientist smiled politely and turned away. As they moved deeper, doors appeared before them, opening without sound. Elias watched closely. One door opened fast. Another hesitated just a fraction of a second. No one else seemed to notice. They reached a chamber prepared for rest and discussion. Seats grew from the floor like shaped stone, fitting each visitor perfectly. Elias remained standing. He always did. While the diplomats spoke, Elias walked slowly along the edge of the room, pretending to admire the art carved into the walls. The carvings showed past rulers, great meetings, moments of unity. His fingers brushed the surface. The stone was warm, too warm. He paused near one carving and looked down. The floor there had a faint crack, carefully smoothed over. Someone had fixed it, recently by the look of it. That bothered him more than the crack itself. Later, as the delegation was led to their assigned chambers, Elias began forming a mental map. He did this everywhere he went. Count steps, note turns, remember landmarks, but the palace made this difficult. Corridors curved gently, then sharply. A hallway that should have led east felt like it bent south. Still, patterns appeared, small ones, repeating ones. At one point the group stopped because the corridor ahead simply ended in a blank wall. The Kelari guide did not react. He waited. After a few seconds the wall rippled and opened into an archway. "The palace responds to need," the guide said calmly. Elias frowned. The delay had been longer this time. That night, Elias stood alone in his assigned chamber. The room was comfortable, shaped to human needs without being asked. The bed adjusted when he sat. The light dimmed when he closed his eyes. He did not sleep. Instead, he listened. There was a sound beneath the silence. A low hum, uneven, like a machine working harder than it should. He pressed his ear to the wall. The sound grew clearer, then faded. Machines made noise. Living things breathed. Gods did neither. The next day, during another tour, Elias fell slightly behind on purpose. The Kelari attendants did not stop him. The palace, however, did. A corridor narrowed gently, guiding him back toward the group. Elias stopped. The corridor stopped narrowing. He stepped sideways. The wall did not move. He stepped forward again. The corridor narrowed. Elias smiled faintly. "So you push, but you don't pull," he murmured. Later, he spoke quietly to one of the younger Kelari aides, a thin being with pale eyes and a curious tilt to their head. "Does the palace ever make mistakes?" Elias asked. The aide blinked slowly. "The palace is perfect," Elias nodded. "Does it ever need repair?" Another blink, longer this time. "It has always been as it is." "That's not an answer," Elias said gently. The aide looked around, then lowered their voice. "There are rooms we no longer enter. Doors that no longer open." Elias felt a chill, not of fear but of recognition. He had seen this before, on old stations, old ships, systems that still ran but not well. That evening, Elias requested access to public schematics of the palace. The request confused the hosts, but they agreed. The schematics were beautiful and useless. They showed ideal paths, perfect symmetry, no flaws. Elias compared them to his mental map. They did not match. He borrowed a small notepad from one of the scientists and began to sketch. Not neat, just lines and curves and marks, real paths, real turns, places where the floor dipped slightly, places where the light lagged. By the time he finished, he had something rough but honest. The next morning, the palace surprised everyone. A ceremonial hall shifted while the delegation stood inside it, not dramatically, just enough that a pillar moved a hand's width closer to the center. The Kelari nobles paused. Murmurs spread. "The palace adjusts for balance," one elder said, though his voice lacked certainty. Elias watched the floor. Tiny lines of stress appeared, then vanished. Balance, he thought, or compensation. That was when he knew. The palace was not mysterious. It was tired. During a break, Elias approached the same young aide again. "I think your palace is doing too much," he said. The aide's eyes widened. "It guides us." "It covers for you," Elias replied. "It fixes problems before you see them, but that means you never fix the cause." The aide was silent. Elias showed them the sketch. "This is what it's really like," he said, "not what it wants you to believe." The aide studied the drawing for a long time. "No one has drawn it this way before. That doesn't mean it's wrong." That night, Elias returned to his room and placed the sketch on the floor. The light shifted, focusing on it. The hum beneath the walls changed pitch. For the first time since entering the palace, Elias felt something like a tension. "Easy," he said softly, not sure why. "I'm not here to break you." The hum steadied. Outside, the palace floated as it always had, calm and silent. Inside, unseen systems adjusted, not out of command, but out of something closer to relief. And Elias Mercer, human soldier, stood at the beginning of a mystery that was never about secrets or gods, but about a system that had been trusted for too long without being understood. The next day inside the royal palace felt different, though no one spoke about it openly. The light still flowed softly from unseen sources, and the halls still curved in their slow, careful ways, but something had shifted. Elias Mercer could feel it the moment he stepped out of his chamber. The low hum beneath the walls was steadier now, like a tired machine that had found a rhythm it could hold for a while. Not fixed, just coping. The human delegation gathered for another formal walk through the inner palace. The Kelari elders moved with practiced calm, their long robes brushing the floor in perfect time with each other. Elias followed behind, eyes alert, senses open. He was not looking for danger. He was looking for truth. As they walked, Elias noticed the palace reacting faster to the group than before. Doors opened sooner. Lights adjusted almost on time. Almost. It felt like a system trying harder because it had been noticed. One of the human diplomats leaned toward another and whispered, clearly impressed, "It's like the palace knows we're here." Elias did not comment. He counted steps. They entered a wide gallery filled with floating symbols, each one representing a past decision made by the Kalari rulers. The symbols moved slowly in the air, glowing faintly. The elders stopped and bowed their heads in respect. This was a sacred place where the palace had once guided leaders during moments of doubt. Elias studied the symbols closely. He saw patterns repeating, choices looping back on themselves. He realized something unsettling. The palace had not been offering wisdom. It had been narrowing options. Over time, the same kinds of decisions were being made again and again. One symbol flickered just slightly, then stabilized. The elders did not see it. Elias did. After the ceremony, the group paused near a resting hall. The younger Kalari aide stood nearby, watching Elias with open curiosity now instead of guarded distance. Their name was Sale. Elias had learned it quietly the day before. "You were right," Sale said in a low voice. "There are delays today, small ones but new." Elias nodded. "It's working harder, that means it's compensating for something." "For what?" Sale asked. "For being alone too long," Elias replied. Sale looked confused. Elias explained gently. "Systems like this are not meant to replace people forever. They are meant to help, to guide. But when everyone stops questioning them, they start making choices just to keep things stable. Not healthy, just stable." Sale's eyes dimmed slightly. "We believed stability was perfection." "That's a common mistake," Elias said. Later that cycle, Sale took a risk. They led Elias through a lesser-used corridor, one that curved more sharply than others and felt heavier. The air was warmer here, the light dimmer. "This path is not used in ceremonies," Sale said. "The palace rarely opens it." "Rarely is not never," Elias replied. The corridor ended at a tall door marked with symbols that looked older than the rest. The door did not open when they approached. Sale hesitated. "This is as far as I am permitted to go." Elias studied the door. There were faint marks on the floor before it. Footsteps. Many long ago, none recent. He stepped closer. The hum beneath the walls rose slightly, uneven again. "I'm not asking you to break rules," Elias said. "Just tell me what's behind it." Sale swallowed. "Old control systems, records, the first designs." Elias felt a quiet satisfaction. "That's what I thought." The door remained closed. Elias did not push it. Not yet. That evening, Elias met with the human scientists in a shared chamber. He showed them his growing collection of sketches. Not just maps now, but notes about delays, temperature shifts, sound changes. One scientist frowned. "You're saying the palace is failing." "No," Elias corrected. "I'm saying it's exhausted." Another scientist leaned closer. "Could it be dangerous?" Elias shook his head. "Not in the way you're thinking. It's not hostile, it's just overburdened." The diplomats were less interested. "This is not our role," one said. "We are guests." "That's fair," Elias replied. "But if the palace collapses one day, guests will be here too." The room went quiet. That night the palace acted without being asked. Elias was walking alone when a side passage opened beside him. No guide, no signal, just an opening. He stopped. "This is new," he said softly. The passage led downward, a direction the palace usually avoided. Elias hesitated only a moment before stepping inside. The walls felt closer here, the light dimmer. The hum grew louder, uneven again. The passage opened into a vast chamber filled with slowly moving shapes of light and stone. Data, Elias realized. Old data. Stored in physical form because digital systems of the time could not handle the load. The air was thick with heat. The system was running beyond its limits. Elias walked carefully, reading symbols he barely understood but could feel. Choices, predictions. Outcomes stacked upon outcomes. At the center stood a pillar, cracked and glowing faintly. "So this is the heart," Elias murmured. As he approached, the palace reacted. The floor shifted, gently but firmly guiding him away from the pillar. "I know," Elias said. "You don't want me here." The hum wavered, then steadied. "I'm not here to take control," he continued. "I'm here to help you breathe." The floor stopped moving. Elias sat down slowly right where he was, a simple human act, non-threatening, honest. For a long moment nothing happened. Then the light in the chamber softened. Images formed in the air. Not words, not language, memories. The palace's memories. Elias saw the early days. Kelari engineers working together, adjusting systems, laughing, arguing. He saw leaders consulting the palace, then deciding for themselves. Over time, those images changed. Fewer engineers, fewer adjustments, more trust placed in predictions, more reliance. The palace had adapted by simplifying its role. It reduced choices to reduce risk. It guided harder because no one guided it. "You were never meant to be alone," Elias whispered. The images faded. When Elias returned to his chamber, Sale was waiting outside, clearly nervous. "It opened a forbidden path," Sale said. "Yes," Elias replied. "Because it's asking for help." Sale looked shaken. "The elders will not accept this easily." "They don't have to accept it today," Elias said. "Just start by listening." The next formal gathering was tense. The elders spoke of small palace irregularities, delays, adjustments that felt unusual. The words were careful, but the concern was real. Elias stood silently at the edge of the chamber. Sale stepped forward, hands shaking slightly. "Honored elders," they said, "the palace is not failing. It is overworked." Murmurs spread. Sale continued, voice stronger now. "We have treated guidance as authority. We have treated assistance as rule." One elder turned to Elias. "Is this human influence?" Elias met the elder's gaze calmly. "It's human experience," he said. "We build systems too. And we break them by trusting them too much." Silence followed. The palace lights dimmed briefly, then returned brighter than before. It was listening. Elias knew then that the hardest part was coming. Not understanding the palace, but convincing its people that perfection had never been the goal. And somewhere deep within the ancient structure, systems that had not been accessed in centuries began to wake, not in defense, but in hope. The royal palace did not change suddenly. It did not shake or glow or make any grand sign. Instead, it became quieter. The hum beneath the walls softened, no longer sharp or strained. Elias Mercer noticed it first, as he often did. The silence was not empty. It was careful, like someone listening closely. The elders called for a private council. This itself was unusual. Normally, decisions flowed through ritual and tradition, guided by the palace's subtle signals. But now, the signals were unclear. The palace was responding, yes, but not leading as it once had. Elias stood outside the council chamber as expected of him. He did not need to hear the words inside to understand the mood. Through the walls, he could feel uncertainty. The palace light near the chamber flickered once, then steadied. A small thing, a telling thing. Sale emerged later, their posture tense but their eyes sharp. "They are divided," Sale said quietly. "That's normal," Elias replied. "It means they're thinking again." Sale gave a weak smile. "Some believe the palace is testing us. Others believe it is reacting to your presence." "And you?" Elias asked. "I believe," Sale said slowly, "that we forgot how to take responsibility." That answer pleased Elias more than he expected. Over the next cycles, Elias was given limited permission to study non-sacred areas of the palace, always accompanied, always watched. It was a compromise. The elders were cautious, but they could not ignore the changes anymore. Rooms that had once been sealed now opened briefly, as if the palace itself wanted them seen. Hallways corrected their curves instead of forcing travelers to adjust. Elias treated every step with respect. He did not rush. He did not demand. He observed. He noticed that many of the palace's oldest systems were layered on top of each other, patches added over centuries. Instead of removing old processes, the palace had learned to work around them. Like an old building with too many repairs, it still stood, but it was heavy with its own history. One day, while studying a wall of slowly moving symbols, Elias spoke aloud without thinking. "You're running too many predictions," he said. The symbols paused. Sale watched, breath held. "I know why," Elias continued gently. "You're afraid to be wrong." The light dimmed, then returned. "You don't need to decide everything," Elias said. "You were never meant to." That evening, Sale brought Elias something unexpected. A small data crystal, dull and old. "This was kept in the archives," Sale said. "It is marked as obsolete. No one has accessed it in centuries." Elias turned it over in his hand. "Obsolete doesn't mean useless." They found a quiet chamber and activated the crystal. Images filled the air, clearer than anything Elias had seen inside the palace so far. These were not predictions or outcomes. These were instructions, design notes, purpose statements. The palace in its earliest form had been built as an advisor system. It was meant to model possibilities, not choose between them. It was meant to challenge rulers, not replace them. The final authority was always meant to rest with living minds. Sale stared at the images, stunned. "This contradicts everything we are taught." "It doesn't," Elias said softly. "It completes it." When the elders were shown the crystal, the chamber filled with tension. Some refused to look at it directly. Others watched in silence, their expressions unreadable. One elder spoke at last. "If this is true, then we have misunderstood our greatest creation." "Yes," Elias said, "and that's okay. Understanding can change." Another elder's voice was sharp. "The palace has guided us through peace and prosperity." "It has helped," Elias agreed. "But it has also been carrying your fear of mistakes." The elders fell silent. That night the palace did something it had not done in generations. It asked a question, not in words but in form. A chamber reshaped itself into a simple space, empty except for a single platform. No symbols, no guidance lights, just space. Sale felt it immediately. "It's waiting." "Yes," Elias said, "it's giving control back." The elders gathered slowly, uncertain. Standing on the platform felt wrong to them, like stepping without support. For the first time, the palace did not suggest where to stand, how to move, or when to speak. An elder took a step forward, then another. "It feels incomplete," one said. "That's choice," Elias replied. "It always does." Over the next days, small experiments began. Decisions were made without palace input. Minor ones at first, seating arrangements, meeting times. The palace did not resist. It adjusted. The hum beneath the walls grew softer with each choice made by living minds. Elias worked with Kalari engineers, those few who still remembered maintenance traditions passed down through families. Together, they traced old systems, identified redundant processes, and gently shut some down. Not erased, just rested. The palace responded with visible relief. Heat levels dropped, light stabilized, corridors stopped forcing corrections and began holding shape. Sale watched it all with a mix of awe and regret. "We trusted it too much," they said one day. "You trusted it with the wrong things," Elias replied. "Guidance is not the same as surrender." As the palace stabilized, something else changed. The elders began arguing more. At first, this alarmed many. Debate had been rare for generations, but Elias saw it as a good sign. "They're alive again," he told Sale. "Disagreement means responsibility." One elder confronted Elias privately. "You have undone centuries of order," the elder said. Elias met their gaze calmly. "No, I reminded you who was supposed to carry it." The elder was silent for a long time. Then they bowed their heads slightly, not in submission, in acknowledgement. The palace, meanwhile, began unlocking deeper archives on its own. Rooms once marked forbidden opened fully. Inside were records of forgotten experiments, abandoned plans, and creative ideas that had never been allowed to grow because they did not fit predicted outcomes. The Kelari people were stunned. "We could have been more," Sale whispered as they walked through one such chamber. "You still can," Elias said. The interstellar accord took notice. Other species began requesting reports. How had a human soldier achieved what scholars could not? Elias' answer was always the same. "I didn't solve anything," he said. "I just stopped treating a tool like a god." As preparations began for Elias' eventual departure, the palace made one final, personal gesture. Elias returned to the deep chamber where he had first seen the palace's memories. The pillar at the center was no longer cracked, not repaired but stabilized. Images formed again. This time they showed future paths, not predictions, possibilities, wide and open. "You'll be fine," Elias said quietly. The light pulsed once, warm and steady. When Sale joined him, they looked at Elias with deep respect. "Will humans always do this?" they asked. "See what others miss," Elias smiled faintly. "No, we miss plenty, we just ask different questions." As Elias walked back toward the upper halls, the palace did not guide his steps. It trusted him to find his way. And for the first time in centuries, the royal palace of the Kelari Dominion did not feel like a ruler watching over its people, but like a partner, finally allowed to rest while others learned to lead again.